Welcome, everybody. My name is Elisabetta, and I'm here with Muna Kasimi, Head of Data Science and Linguistics. So I think we're going to wait a couple of minutes before officially starting. In the meanwhile, I wanted to thank you all for joining today. We are here in the Trent office, Italy, Muna and I. So maybe while we wait for the others, if somebody wants to tell us where they are connected from, it would be nice to feel as if we were in the same room. So just less than a minute, and I think we start at least with some notes on how the session will go, so that you already know what to expect, and then we'll get into the heart of the matter. So just a quick note on that before we dive in. First of all, as you've seen, we asked you to submit questions already in the registration form. And we actually got some really, really nice questions, and we'll make sure to tackle those first in order to prioritize those and make sure that we hit the topics that you care the most about. But that being said, do not worry. We want it to be a conversation between Muna, me, and you all. So if you have any question, if something that we say sparks your thoughts, feel free to drop them into the Q&A box that you should be seeing. So drop them at any time, and at the end, if time allows, we will answer them live. Otherwise, no problem, we'll follow up with you personally via email. So your questions will still get an answer. And another thing I've been already asked a million times is if we record it. Yes, we will. Maybe some of the registrants didn't manage to attend, so we will send the recording after this session. Anyway, we will also publish some key takeaways and some content on the matter on our website later on. So why are we here today, Muna? We get a constant stream of questions on many topics, and we wanted to create a dedicated space to answer those questions. That's why we created this concept, office hours. First one is on this very interesting topic, which is dealing with noise in feedback analysis. I imagine that since you joined here today, you are familiar with a recurring frustration that you have when dealing with voice of the consumer data, which is having mountains of data, loads of data, yet feeling that insights are buried within this noise. And that's why we have Muna today, again, Head of Data Science and Linguistics, to answer some of the questions that we received in the form and the ones that you might have today. So let's get started. First question, which is extremely interesting. What should we consider as noise in feedback analysis, and what should be done to exclude it?
Thank you, Elisabetta, for the introduction. Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to be here and very happy to start answering the first question. Actually, there is no one unique definition of noise, because that depends heavily on the type of the data you are dealing with, on the distribution of the data. It depends on the company needs and so on. But from our experience, we can identify three main categories of noise. The first type of noise that we can find it at data level. It's really at the raw data level. When we get them from the different sources, they might come already with noise. I can give an example. A product can be assigned to a wrong SKU, a wrong category, a wrong brand. There are some cases where we find wrong reviews, assigned to the wrong product, and so on. That is where the noise comes at data level. Now, once you collect the data and you store it in the database, you are ready to perform analysis. And to perform analysis, you need to apply some models which are mostly probabilistic models. When you apply a probabilistic model to analyze your data, the outcome is not 100% accurate because probabilities are not 100% always accurate. And they might generate, even if it's small percentage of inaccurate predictions. What is known also in the world of generative AI, hallucinations. And these are examples of noise that you generate once you analyze your data. We have a third category of noise that is related to the task that you would like to perform on the data. So let's take an example. If you are interested in analyzing data reviews, and you would like to focus on the mid-range ratings. So you are not interested in analyzing reviews that of people who are extremely unhappy about the product or extremely happy about it because they don't give you valuable insights. In that case, these extreme values become noise with respect to the task you are interested in achieving. Another example, if you would like to target a specific argument, a specific topic about your analysis, let's say you are interested in knowing what people think about the battery of a product. So you would publish a post in social media, the post will trigger reactions, people will start writing comments, give you feedback, but we don't expect, especially in social media, that all the comments about that post are indeed talking about the product battery. They might be talking about that product, but about different aspects. So we cannot blindly take that data and consider they are all relevant for the analysis I would like to do. So in that case, all the data that is not talking about product battery is considered as noise. And this is what we call noise at task level. Since the noise, as you can see, has different categories and so on, there is no one single solution that can satisfy all these different types of noise. So since the problem is a bit complex, because we have different categories, we need to have tailored strategies for each one of them. For example, at the data level, you need to have your own knowledge base, your own standard that guide the collection of the data before putting it in your database. If you have your knowledge base, your schema, you can guide the extraction process in such a way to reduce the noise. This is a fundamental requirement, and this is actually what we do at Wonderflow. At analysis level, it might be straightforward that we see, okay, if the model is generating noise, I need to have the best model in the world in order to analyze my data. Yes, we need to have very accurate models, but also we need to think about how to design the solution that we use to analyze the data. For example, in our experience, hallucinations are a very well-known problem of generative AI models. And how we deal with them, for example, in this case, in our experience, if you run or if you use a generative AI model on unstructured data, like a set of reviews, a collection of reviews, and then you ask this generative AI model to output an unstructured output, like a summary, a recommendation, a text. There, these models are subject to hallucination because to give you the insights that you want, written in a very nice way, they rely on creativity. And when you are creative, you are more subject to hallucination. Instead, if you try to model your solution in a more structured way, so I don't give you directly all the reviews as they are, but I try to aggregate them in a certain way, have to do the calculus before and so on, and give you already something that is structured. So this model will reason on top of structured data, and then also you guide the output that you get from the generative AI model in a structured way. So in this way, you can guide the extraction process. And in our experience, this way of designing the solutions reduces heavily the amount of hallucination and therefore reduces the amount of noise that you can find in the data. Now, for the last category of noise, that is task level, here is a typical problem of first outlier detection. You need to remove extreme values. There are plenty of statistical models that help you, starting from machine learning models like clustering that help you to find outliers. Then you need to know whether these outliers are noise or something useful. There are statistical methods that help you to remove extreme values. And if you would like to find relevant data, this is a pure information retrieval problem. There are plenty of techniques in the literature in the last 30 years or even 40 that help you to find the relevant data to what you would like to do. And we simply implement them to get the data that is interesting for us.
Interesting. So let's move from these more high-level question to a more specific question, actually two that were quite similar, so we grouped them together. And first is, how is it possible to eliminate the noise of a review that has been collected through a campaign, so we consider it as being incentivized, instead of willingly left in an organic way, so to say. Another question that was similar to that spoke about many reviews having maybe sometimes incentivized and verified purchase tags coming from the e-commerces. The question is, how can you decipher organic reviews when data looks like it's conflicting? That you tell us.
This is a very interesting question because it gives us also a very concrete example about the first type of reviews that we might have. So let me answer first the first question that asks about how to remove the incentivized reviews from the data if I don't want to analyze them. So this is pretty straightforward in our solution. When we collect the data, we collect the data with what we call badges, which is a kind of tags that are assigned to the reviews to give you information about the type of those reviews. For example, a review was written by someone who actually purchased the product. So this is a verified purchase review. If the person was incentivized to write the review, then the review is tagged with incentivized reviews. So if you do not want to consider incentivized reviews in your analysis, it's very easy for us. We have a set of filters with all the badges that you can see here in the screenshot, and it's enough to select everything except the verified purchase reviews. In this way, you can exclude them from your analysis and you move on. So that is straightforward. Now, about what was asked regarding conflicting information. So if you can see here, you have some reviews that might have both badges. They might be considered as incentivized review and also verified purchase. This is actually something that is possible. So you can buy a product, but receive, for example, a gift card in order to write the review. So this is something that can happen. actually, in this very specific case, if you go to the original website where we got the data from, you can find actually that the information is correct. It's not noise. This is a kind of review that can have both badges. There is no problem with it. But again, since the person using or the user who is analyzing the data might have a different opinion, because as I said at the beginning, the noise depends heavily on the need of the company, on the need of the data analyst, the need of the task itself. Here, the person might say, no, to me, these two badges, they should not occur together, and this is noise. So in these cases, what we usually do, first we analyze the data to understand how often this happens. For example, if you look here, we have analyzed more than 40 categories to see how often this pattern happens. And we looked at all the verified purchase reviews, and we have calculated how many of them are incentivized reviews. And the results, you can see them in the chart. So most of the vast majority of the categories, this happens in 0 to 2% of the reviews. So when the percentage of noise, according to the user viewpoint, they are not so, the percentage is not so high, and it doesn't have an impact on the final decision that I am taking, we can live with it. The moment this percentage becomes a lot higher, then we need to make action. So we can observe that there are some categories that they have like up to 16% of reviews having both patches. This might be related to the category of the product, a product that have a different marketing strategy, but we observed that this is related actually to the channel. Okay, you can see here, if you see this breakdown, and the number of incentivized reviews is a lot higher in some channels, but we can find it like with a very low frequency, in other channels. So this is something that is very important to understand first the data to see if this is a normal behavior or not. In our case, in this specific example, it is correct. The data is correct already from the source. This is the characteristic of the channel itself. So there is no problem of noise in this case. Again, if the person analyzing the data still think that this is noisy and conflicting and disturbing, we do have a solution. At Wonderflow, we do not limit ourselves only to the information that we get from the source, these badges like incentivized, verified purchase. They are badges, information that we get from the websites. But we develop also our own badges. And the advantage is that you don't have any control over what you get from the website. But what you can develop internally, we have full control of it. And this is the badge that we call Incentivized Review AI. Actually, we analyze the reviews and we look for specific patterns, the linguistic patterns that explicitly mention that this review was a part of a promotion. This is an example. This review is collected as a part of a promotion and can be any other expression that give you this information. In this way, when we see this expression, we are more confident about the correctness of the badge, and we can move on with our analysis. So the solution for this, you can use the Incentivized Review AI and proceed with the task that you need to do. Now the question, is this helping? Is this really reducing the noise? The answer is yes. If you can see here, I took exactly the same chart with the amount of incentivized reviews coming from the website. And if you look at the green chart, the green bar chart here, these are the incentivized review AI, and you can see they are a lot less than the incentivized reviews coming from the original data, coming with the data. And in this case, using that badge, we can reduce the noise in the first category by 89%, in the second by 100%. Because what we can observe here is that what was tagged as incentivized review in the website didn't have any explicit expression in the review saying that this was a part of promotion. And in this way, we can help you solve the problem.
Thank you. So now we've seen how to reduce noise based on what you consider noise. And question 3 is yet another angle on this topic. So a lot of questions, we've grouped them together on how to consolidate VOC data across different data sources. Different data sources might have user feedback that could conflict in a way and create noise. So the question is, how can we integrate all these different feedback?
That is an excellent question that requires a bit of attention, because there are different dimensions where we do the consolidation of data. The first one is at data type level. So here, the data that we get at Wonderflow, we get data from different sources. So you can get data from rating and reviews from web shops. They have some specific characteristics. You can get data from social media. You can also get data directly from our client companies, like survey data, call centers, and so on. Now, to consolidate the data, we need first, the data that we need to keep, first of all, the data separated means we need to know to which type of data the review belongs, because we do not want to put all the data in the same place, because each kind of source has its own characteristics. Let's say in rating and reviews, usually people write reviews about their experience after buying a product. They share experience, motivation for purchasing the product, and so on. In social media, the story is different. People talk more about expectations rather than the experience of the product. The survey is completely different because it's incentivized. People are answering the questions they are asked about. Then the call center, people call when they have urgency. So these data are different, and it's right to keep them separate because they are representing different segments of clients. Okay? And by nature, since these sources are different, it might be the case that they are generating conflicting insights because they are reflecting different kind of profiles, different kind of people, different kind of needs, and different kind of intent. So this situation, so having the noise or conflicting data is natural. Okay? So we keep them separated, so we allow the users of our dashboard to perform the analysis at any level. They can decide to group all of them and perform the analysis. They can decide to keep them separated. So it's very important to keep them separated. So what we do, the consolidation, we do it at the insights level. So once we have extracted the insights from each single data source, we consolidate them using our, again, knowledge base. We have what we call dictionaries of topics, themes, you can call them in this way, what people are discussing about the product. And we unify these insights under the same knowledge, the same dictionary. Yeah, the same dictionary, the same ontology. And this, you can see it as the common language. So if we use the same dictionary to represent all the data, all these different sources of data, they can communicate with each other. Now, what I can do if the insights are conflicting, okay? What if the pain point in rating and reviews are very different from the call center? Here you have different things to do. Usually we go with frequency. So I have different sources. I will look for the pain points that are common among different sources, and that would be the insight that I get from the data. If you would like to group all the insights together, you can also use weighted KPIs. You can give different weights to the different sources of data that you are dealing with and say, okay, for this specific task, I will give more weight for rating and review. For example, the durability of the product. I know that people who are writing reviews in rating and reviews are people who actually purchased the product, and they have an experience and they can give me feedback about the durability. So I will give more weight to the insights I get from that data, and this can be easily solved with a weighted KPI in order to aggregate this data. This is the first part of the story of data consolidation. Another very interesting question that we got was very specific about this. So say, how I can combine the insights I get from the rating and the reviews. So they are talking about one single source, one single source of data, but this data have two dimensions. They have the rating, which is numerical data, and it has also the reviews, which includes the topics that the pain points that people are experiencing about the product. And the question was how we can consolidate these two. What I do if the review is having 5 stars, but it contains 2-3 topics that are negative. What should I consider? Is the user happy or is complaining? And this is very interesting because we do have a solution for this. We have developed a metric that is called the relevance that does exactly this. So we study basically the impact of the topic mentions in a review on the star rating. Means if the person is complaining about 10 different aspects of the product, but the rating is 4, none of them really matters a lot because the rating is high. But instead, if the review is all positive about all the different aspects of the product, but complaining about the battery, and the rating is 1, then the battery is the most impactful topic there. So we study really the correlation between what people say in the review and the rating, and we developed a metric that is specific for that called the relevance that helps you to consolidate these results and take informed decisions.
Thank you. Extremely good. Yeah. Let's go to the last question and say, if time allows. So nice questions on language. So how do you manage and detect effective language, and how do you detect sarcasm in analyzing reviews? Extremely interesting from a linguistic point.
Yes, this is extremely interesting. This is something that was very, very difficult just 5 years ago, let's say, before generative AI came into life, that we are all using it now, because it's very difficult to detect sarcasm. How you can say if this person is positive or is sarcastic is very, very difficult. It has always been challenging in the world of natural language processing. But now with generative AI, this is something that we can do easily, and I must say that they perform extremely well. So if we start with the sarcasm first, And this is a natural extension to the analysis that we are doing now. If in terms of sentiment, the standard offer that we have is positive, negative, and neutral, but we can extend it further with the metadata. Okay, we have the possibility to analyze our reviews and assign any badge, any tag that we want, okay? And one of these could be, is the review sarcastic or not? And we can develop metadata using powerful models that will analyze the reviews and classify them into different classes, okay? Even the same metadata could be sarcastic, I don't know, joyful, whatever. And you can enumerate all the classes that you would like to have. And then you can tag your information using this very powerful models. The same thing applies to offensive language, and generative AI models are very good at that because behind they all have these moderation models that basically they usually run to detect whether the content that they are analyzing is appropriate or not. And actually we had an experience about that when we wanted to classify some information. Some of the content that we were analyzing was not analyzed exactly because it had an inappropriate language. And although we didn't ask explicitly to extract the information about offensive language, it was a simple classification problem, like extract the topics that this review is talking about. We didn't ask anything more, but the model, the generative AI model, was tagging all the expressions that had inappropriate language with the class inappropriate language, even if we didn't ask about it. And that was very interesting experience because we had suddenly a new class in our database that is called inappropriate language. So this is something that already we handle, not in an explicit way, but if we want to handle it, there is no problem for us to develop metadata that detect offensive language very easily.
Thank you. So we still have like around 5 minutes. I know you had to rush, you had a lot of things to do. So if you want to touch upon something more in depth, and in the meanwhile, I also ask if there are other questions from the audience, and I'll check them. For example, you mentioned a lot metadata capabilities in reducing noise. Probably this is also interesting to say something on how segmenting and filtering data thanks to metadata can be a way to reduce other kinds of noise, since there are many kinds of noise in user feedback.
Exactly. So that is very, very interesting question. The metadata capabilities is something very powerful that we have because it goes beyond the explicit topics that people are extracting from reviews. So we can go way beyond. We can talk about the type of users who are writing these reviews. We can sense what are the things, for example, they are interested in. So with metadata analysis that we have, for example, you can extract the type of users, what we call user personas, for example.
Maybe even if they are experienced or not.
Experienced or not, for which purpose they would like to use this product, if this product was received as a gift or not. There are many different aspects that we would like to capture about the purpose of using the product, where we use the product, who is using the product, and so on. So personas are definitely something very interesting because it helps you also to segment the data especially if you want, I don't know, let's say marketing. You want to do some work on marketing, personas are essential. You tag your data, you segment it, and then you run dedicated analysis for that. Yeah, and it can be on anything else, as I said before, the sentiment. If you are not happy about just having 3 labels, you can define the range of sentiments that you would like to have, and you implement it as metadata that you can assign to the reviews.
Yeah, and we have an answer to what we were saying before about offensive language. So they tell us that exactly in survey data, it's common that respondents use offensive language in open-ended questions, in open-ended answers to questions. And what they do is removing those records with offensive language from the data set. I think this is what you were explaining before. Once you're able to identify something, you're also able to decide either to include it or to remove it based on your needs. You might want to include it, probably not, but you always have the chance to remove it from your data set. So this is exactly one use case that when I was talking about. Okay, I think we've rounded up the questions. There were some other questions that we didn't manage to touch upon, and we can follow up directly with you via email. If questions come to mind after the webinar and you didn't manage to drop them in the Q&A box, feel free to reach out and ask them. And obviously, as I said before, we're going to send the recording to the registrants if you're interested in having again a look at what was being said, or if you want to share with colleagues that couldn't attend. So I'd like to thank Muna a lot. I know this is a subject that sparks a lot of enthusiasm in you, so I was really happy to hear about that. This office hour format will keep going on in the next months on other topics, so keep checking for what we will cover with our internal knowledge and which topics we will cover. That being said, thank you again for joining. Thank you for all the questions that you asked before and during the webinar. And if you want to see the solution in action, besides what we've talked a bit and what we've briefly explained today, you can go to our website, wonderflow.ai, and you can book a demo with our team to see the solution in action, or reach out to us even via email, and we will be glad to show you. Thank you again, and have a nice rest of the day.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Muna.
Thank you.